need to unmute myself. Okay, should be good. Should be recording. So the question was, what have I been doing? So yeah, before hopefully working at Pagely, I've been working at a development group or a development shop, working on all sorts of crazy stuff, IoT things that aren't horrible, well, hopefully. Before that, I worked on healthcare applications. I worked on real estate applications, just pretty much anything. I worked on social network stuff, libraries, built frameworks on top of frameworks, all sorts of horrible stuff like that. But yeah, one of the more interesting things I've helped write is a social network for furries, which is horrible. And I'm not proud of it, but it was extremely entertaining.
Sounds like a very interesting experience. This was all agency work?
A lot of it, yes.
So lots of short projects?
Yeah. I used to work with a guy who looked a lot like you.
All right. Well, that's an interesting background. Why don't we get started?
Yep.
Share your screen. Bring up your favorite PHP editor. IDE. All right. We can all see it.
Good. I started up a composer project, just empty,
all right.
whatever.
Well, that's a great start. Oh, I'm not in this screen, so it's going to be hard for me to give you some of the info you need, but we'll try to make that happen. All right.
Yeah, I can always look over on your machine.
Well, yeah, you're going to need a key.
Yeah.
Now you have ones on your machine. You can just use those. We'll cheat.
Okay.
All right. So for this project, we're going to use the Amazon EC2 SDK.
Okay.
And we're going to get a list of all of the instance IDs from one of our accounts. And I'm going to give you the credentials so that you can connect to it.
Very good. So I am going to pretend like I have never used AWS library.
You can just pull up whatever credentials you have since I'm not on
Absolutely.
Zoom to paste them to you.
Will do.
All right, so you're welcome to use any of the tools you would as part of your normal day. Just keep them on your screen or let me know what you're using.
Will do. Oh, good. There's a PHP SDK. All right. Started. I already have Composer. This will be easy. So maybe we should also mention that before coming into the technical interview, I have been mentioned to you that we use 3 things: PHP, AWS, and Docker.
Right, and I ask as part of this to have a PHP development environment with Docker available set up and your favorite IDE ready.
Yes. If I was a total ass, I would have started out with, oh yes, let me start up my Gen 2 environment. Oh, I don't have PHP set up. So let's blow this entire interview with me compiling PHP.
It did happen once.
True story.
Anyhow.
All right, we got AWS. Wow, what's going on? I have no idea what.
Oh dear.
Rude.
Nice.
Try again.
Stable internet connections part of the interview too.
Well, it is a remote job.
Here, I'll airplay. Or
That's all right. It came back. I don't know.
you got it?
Yeah. All right, we're back.
I have the stream.
Okay. All right, so let's start out. Why do I not have PHP class on here? Oh well, doesn't matter. We're getting EC2 instances.
Their IDs.
I figure we might want other stuff. So. Not used to typing on laptop keyboard. All right, so we need some AWS here. I'm going to pretend like I have set environment variables, which directly, kind of, sort of. I'm going to pretend like I already got the credentials from Josh. So.
All right. So you said you hadn't used the AWS SDK before?
Correct.
Have you used Amazon APIs in any other ways before?
No, I have not.
All right. So
I've been using Vultr.
As you can see from the docs, there's a lot of different ways to set up AWS credentials. If instead of a dev exercise, this was production, which one would you choose?
Let's see. Oh, if I have no idea what an IAM role is. Application instance, temporary security credentials. So depending on how the environment is set up, normally on spinning up VMs and such, I will, in the production environment, I would normally set up environment variables for credentials so to make them not directly accessible on the file system.
All right, that's pretty good. Sounds like a safe practice. So most of the time you actually use the IAM role.
Okay.
This allows you to manage AWS credentials from the central management system and inject them into the server. But environment variables are a good choice as well. Cool. All right, let's get this set up and list those instances. IDs.
So we need something to find. EC2 client. Well, that's cool.
So it's a very big API. So to speed things up, I'll give you a couple hints here. You seem like you can Google for things pretty good, but you want to look for a described instances method.
Okay. Oh, this is horrible. They're like row by row alphabetized.
Yeah, it's on the far right.
Describe instances.
I had nothing to do with this.
And I clicked on something and it didn't.
The docs are broken, so you have to find it in the index and click again to go.
Awesome.
I literally have to talk about this in every single interview. The docs could just not be broken. They are.
ID, image, instances. Got it. So, okay, so now I know how to do that. I need to know what to do to actually spin up the class itself. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Construct. Oh, Oh, there's so many things.
So Amazon has another set of docs that go along with these that are a developer guide that will show setting things up in
Okay.
a more straightforward manner.
Okay. Configuring the SDK, is that what I want?
Let's take a look.
It looks like it was already here. Options. Using AWS services. Oh,
Some code examples on the bottom left if you scroll down.
ah, very good. You see 2 examples. Place to start. Okay. Oh, convenient. It's already calling what I need. What have I done? Again, horrible, horrible keyboard.
All right, for the region, you want US East 1.
Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Let's see what this does. Let me make sure I got my namespace right. HP, okay, I did. What did I do wrong? Oh, I know what I did wrong. I did something wrong. Oh. My auto load isn't working, but whatever. Oh, that takes a while. Okay.
All right, so we got this huge data structure back, and we just want the IDs.
Okay.
What do you do in a case where you need to figure out a big data structure like this.
Well, I don't normally see like if the API docs tell me what I'm going to get back.
All right.
We are describe instance. Oops. So many filters. Results. Hey, cool. Okay. We're asking for instances where we're getting reservations.
Yeah, it's depending on how you purchase your instances depends on how many reservations you have. So it's a pretty complex data structure.
All right, awesome. This doesn't seem like
And it's been
something that would be
compatible since 2007.
all right. There's my instance ID. Okay. So I could do nested for eaches because it looks like reservations is also an array. So there are reservations and then instances.
All right, well, let's do it then.
Okay, so let me fix this real quick so I can actually get this working right. Where are you excluded? Okay. See if it tells me what result is going to be. Okay, so it's not just an array. And okay. Oh. We'll see if that works.
So Josh, what do you guys do while you're waiting?
Post gifts.
Post gifts. I'm thinking of what comments I want to drill into the code, and it's often hard to like not interrupt them, but I know you can't respond to me and type, so I'm forced to bite my tongue.
Blew me away again. Okay.
How many points would you give somebody that starts source diving the SDK and thinking
I mean, Gordon's been showing a lot of pretty good stuff. Most people don't jump right into a class. Most people don't know how to configure their favorite IDE, which tell them to use whatever's their favorite
Oh, come
for
on.
optimal usage. So Gordon's showing lots of good points.
Don't worry about airplane.
Okay. I won't. Oh, lots of things blew up. Okay, so it is probably returning an array. Go back to
Is Zoom or is Zoom?
It does. Far.
You control where you're zooming.
Yeah.
Is that easier to see? It'll lose a bigger file.
we're iterating.
Yeah, we just can't see his output though.
There you go.
So giving
All right. There.
nailed it.
Is that easier to see?
Yeah.
One more time. Got a list of arrays. No warnings. Good. Cool. All right. Got a list
He was
of
running this.
instance IDs.
Can you run one more time? I'm not seeing your output.
Oh, that's weird.
Why am I not seeing your output?
That is really weird. Oh, it's because we're all. That is not the screen I'm on.
That's not the screen you're on?
No?
What screen are you?
Well, I mean, that is not what I'm showing, which
It's
is
not what you're
weird.
zooming, I guess.
That is not what I'm zooming. Let me stop and restart the share. Maybe that's part of the issue.
That looks better.
Yes, it does. Okay, cool. All right, so underneath there is the terminal, which has my results in it.
All right. That looks good. So instead of just dumping those, let's output that as JSON.
Okay. Boom.
All right, perfect. So let's take that index page and let's pretend that it's the first one of an API endpoint. What do we need to add to this page for it to be usable as an API?
Okay, if we're going API, I would probably pull in at least a micro framework to get a router and such to
Right, so
create endpoints.
that would be great. But we don't need to do that. Let's just more talk about what are the things that if you already had a router there, this is one of your endpoints, it's named
Okay.
the way you want.
Okay.
What are a couple things that we would really want to add to this if this was an API?
Okay. Well, if we're in JSON API, we need your standard content type. JSON. All right. I mean, of course, there's going to be authentication. There I assume you probably not want people to get all of your instance IDs directly.
Yep, those would all be good things to
But
add.
yeah,
So
that's a whole other set of, yeah.
is there anything else at the HTTP level that we need to think about besides just the content type?
I mean, you'd have your status codes.
So what are some different status codes we might use in this API endpoint?
Well, if you're just doing a standard get, as long as it's successful, it'd be a 200. If we couldn't fetch it back from AWS for some reason, yeah, 5 something, 504 if I remember right. If
All right.
something jammed up on their end.
All right, that sounds pretty good. Let's jump back to your code and talk about some changes we might want to make if instead of a single API endpoint, we were going to create a full API, 10, 20, 30 endpoints.
Okay.
What are some things we might want to change in our code to prepare us for that?
Okay. Well, if I'm sticking with this, let's see. I'm going to do a class because that's how I roll. We normally call to another method, but just to stick with what we're doing here.
All right, so that's a pretty good starting point.
Yep.
So you have this router, you could obviously keep expanding that switch, and or 10, 20 methods, that would be reasonable. Let's say we get the requirement that we need to output XML and not just JSON. What would we change to make that happen?
Okay, so I keep hearing about this ADR pattern that would
Too
let
far,
us.
Gordon. Too far.
Sorry. Too far. Okay. So yeah, we would also want to probably check the is it the accept header for incoming?
All right, that would be a good way to choose whether we were doing JSON or XML.
Right. So I could pass in the header to the router, or I can just check the headers within the methods and then just return XML instead of pass in type. Type. Just assume JSON for the moment, but
all right.
Do that. We do a switch on the accept header and default to JSON.
Yeah, we can just leave out the details on that, and let's just dig into how we use that return type variable.
Okay. inside my instance IDs. Type. And in case there's ever more than just two. So, of course, we'd also embed all our headers in here. And where did I put that? There it was. Except doing this now, this is a horrible place to put this.
Why is that?
Because I'm gonna have to do the same thing for every single method. So
You're jumping ahead to my next questions.
you can ask it anyway
That's usually
while I write it.
Yeah. No, I mean, so normally that would be my question after you wrote it this way. All right, now we have 10 of those and we have to copy paste it 10 times. How do we fix that?
And XML, it's been a while. I know there's extensions I can use.
All right, we don't need to go into all the details
Okay.
of how we would encode with XML.
Good.
But let's say this. Often with XML, we can't just use an out-of-the-box method. We would need to write code to manage our XML encoding.
Right. Yep.
Where would you put the code in that case?
I would probably write an XML response builder of some sort, because it's probably not just going to be an array of things. There's going to be metadata, because that's how XML rolls. And each property can have attributes. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, we don't need to go into that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump over to that EC2 instances.php file real quick.
Yeah.
Let's go up to the top and let's look at its constructor for a moment.
Yeah.
So right now you're creating your EC2 client in your constructor.
Mm-hmm.
And you might not know this since it's first time using the API, but there can be quite a bit of complexity into creating that instance. Maybe we need to use logic to figure out which version we're using. We might actually want to make a multi-region client instead of a single region client. So we have a bunch of complexity there. We probably don't want it in the constructor. So where do we move that logic?
Don't want it in the constructor. Okay. So, I mean, we still need access to it, so we could still add it to the constructor as a dependency.
All right. Have you ever used any dependency injection?
Oh, yeah. I use Pimple all the time.
Great. Killed me, Gordon. All right.
So yeah, if it was using a full-on, I can bring in Pimple. That's not a problem.
All right. Well, I think I get where you're going there.
Yeah.
We're running low on time, so
Okay.
I don't think we want to jump all the way into that. So we talked to earlier when we're talking earlier, we also mentioned that we use Docker a lot.
Yep.
What's your comfort level with Docker?
I've used some VMs before. I did a little bit of lookups on Docker before we had the interview, so not great, but I installed it.
Sure. So if you were going to put this code inside of a Docker container, how would you start that process? Something you don't know a lot about, but
Okay.
what's the first thing you would do to learn the best way of doing that?
Best way of doing that, other than your standard Googling.
Sure, but when you get back the result from Google, what are
Right.
the techniques you use to figure out the good answers from the noise?
Okay. Well,
Sure, I mean, you can give it a try. Docker, do a search.
API.
It's good. It's on page 2. It's not.
There's something called Docker
It says
PHP.
W3 schools.
Oh God.
That's always the winner, and that's what every interviewee clicks on.
Experts exchange.
Well, I mean, there's stuff from Docker. Docker, blah, blah. It doesn't even say PHP though. Docker PHP, what are these?
Have you ever used Docker Hub?
I saw it when I was looking into Docker. It looked like it has, I guess, kind of VMs for all of the things. I can type. So if you come in here and look for PHP, hey, there's an official image for PHP. So I could start with, I guess, any one of these.
And so why did you pick that image over the other ones?
Other than it being first on the list, it does say it's an official image.
All right, that's a pretty good reason.
So-
So as you clicked in there, you noticed there were a lot of different versions.
Yes, there are.
So when you run into a problem like this, which, all right, I found the official Docker image. It
Right.
gives me all these options.
Yep.
What do you look for to learn on which is the right option for you?
Well, hopefully it would say something down here about what all of the different pieces are. But looking at the top, I know Stretch is a Debian, whatever you call it, version. So I assume those are built off of Debian.
Have you used Debian before?
Oh, yes. Yes.
All right, so going with something where you have background knowledge, that's a pretty good
Right.
way of
Yep.
moving on.
So I would probably start with one of those. But going beyond that, I would probably do some more research on what these others, what Alpine is. I assume it's another Linux.
It is. It's a Linux distro that's very popular in Docker due to its small size.
Oh, very good. Small is good.
All right. Well, I think that's everything we wanted to cover today.
Okay.
Do you have any questions for the team?
No.
All right. Well, thanks for your time.
I hate that question.
Yes.
Mine goes
Everyone
immediately blank.
does.
So
Immediately.
the big tip is that's probably the most important question you're going to get in the entire interview.
Plan it out
Agreed.
ahead of time.
And
Yes.
you should have written and thought of a couple ahead of time.
Absolutely.
You can get the job right there by, it could be as simple as asking about how the team works, showing that you've thought about, oh, it's a remote team, I might need to think about that.
Right.
Or, oh, I read that or saw on the list of text some really interesting things,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't cover them all in this interview.
Right.
Why was that there? it doesn't really matter specifically what you have, but it's your chance to show that you're super interested in the job and that you're super interested in the opportunity. And then that back and forth helps you, often in an interview, like in this case, we would have had other people from the team here, but I would have done most of the talking. And this would be your opportunity to win over the other people that were on that interview.
Right. Like you just ask like if anyone specializes in anything on the team. Pretty much reverse interview.
And that's our interview. Normally, whoever writes it starts out with just a script that echoes things at the first. So there's a lot more we talk about refactoring than here. But Gordon was doing the refactoring before he even got to ask those questions. So he's a hire.
Yeah.
That's our process. What do you guys think? Could you make a decision on whether to hire Gordon or not after that?
Guys,
So it kind of depends on what it is of the team you're on.
Yeah, there's a lot. It's definitely a good start for sure. If your introduction to that, you can problem solve on the fly and stuff. That is one of the most important things to look for a developer on. And just lots of other things to say.
So if you were hiring for a senior role, then probably not.
Yeah.
But if you were hiring for a junior role, seems like a good candidate.
Yeah.
So you said you would do a couple interviews prior to this. What are you looking for in this?
So they're generally these days not me. So they would be somebody else on our management team. And their goals for that would be company fit, ability to work on a remote team, interested in the direction the company's going, making sure that the salary expectations were reasonable. Because we're trying to.
So more of the HR focused
Yep.
parts.
Do you do any sort of upfront coding tests?
We've done them in the past, but we're not doing them right now. We just ask for code samples and we do a code review of anything they give us. And we haven't been doing it because we get so much washout at that stage that it just doesn't really get us anywhere.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it depends on your volume, right? So if you need to filter out more people, you have more steps.
like we would end up with 3 out of 50 applicants coming through
We used HackerRank for a while and had an automated test. And that was super useful because it didn't involve anybody on the team needing to look at anything but the top results. And that was useful, but HackerRank is expensive, and we only did a year contract if the one came up. We didn't find that we were getting the candidate volume to really make it worthwhile, and then we got just as good results of asking somebody from another team who had some more resources to do an HR screen, and they were able to screen almost as well by just figuring out the interest level as that they're. I guess in a lot of ways, they both ended up being interest level screens. Can you do that basic test, or can you talk to someone and prove that you're really excited about the position? Yeah, so if we're looking for a senior, we probably go longer. We might go 2 hours or 2.5 hours on something like this if it's going well, where we might dig in and have them put this in Docker, and then create a Docker network, and then show us how they would do some debugging. We might have spent more time asking them to design something, just talking. Say, all right, it's great, you showed you could use the basic AWS APIs, let's talk about some AWS services and fix it and talk about how you would design a solution using that.
And one comment I was going to make about just this type of interview, this kind of ongoing one question interview. Like this is pretty common a way to do interviews because you can base everything off of one core problem and then progressively add to it. So even if you don't know if you are looking for, like you may not have said, I'm looking specifically for a junior role, I'm looking specifically for a senior role, but you can see how far they go through the course of the interview and kind of gauge like what you would want to hire them as.
And this is, we're not looking for a specific answer that you write a class or anything like that. We're looking that you can write code and talk about it, and then when we ask those questions, how would you improve this? How would you refactor? How would you? That you have those answers, and or don't have those answers, and that says how senior or junior you are, and or if you're below the cutoff for even what we consider junior role, or you came in, your last job was senior, your salary ask was, we have a general idea before, and you're coming in at the junior side, well, then we can also cut this off relatively quick and save time on the team if we're just like, whoa, your resume and your expectations don't match at all what we're seeing here, and we're not going to waste anybody's time. Or things are going great, we can push the time and go longer. Or even if we have to schedule a second follow-up if we think, oh, they might be a great senior fit, but we want to know more. That's what it's saying. Have any of you done an interview of this style?
Quite, sort of, in a while, but sort of.
FizzBuzz doesn't count.
Yeah, it's a little bit more of, it wasn't strictly FizzBuzz, but it was a little more of that kind of like, nothing wasn't building on a bigger problem, or one building one.
Yes, that's the way I always used to interview when I was at bigger companies, and even when I was at other startups, was it would be these very theoretical problems.
Yeah.
And the one thing I found was I never had an idea of if they could solve the sort of problems that we had to solve every day. Like building an API is the sort of problem we had to solve every day. And I could ask very easily, as an aside, some questions to find out, do you know what HTTP is? Or is it just this thing you use and don't understand? Gordon obviously did, and so we didn't have to dig in deep to that. But when I asked the theoretical question, well, then I kind of have to jump through a laundry list of very specific questions to get an idea at that. Then it feels like a test to both of us, and that's really kind of a painful interview for everybody involved.
I've definitely been in those interviews where they're giving you like hard computer science questions and like optimize for big O of N, et cetera, shit. It's like, if you really wanted me to do this, like I could do it and like sit down and Google and figure something out, but are you ever gonna do this in your daily job?
Well, that's my thing, is even the couple cases where I have had to do that, I went to Google, I looked up the appropriate algorithm, and then I implemented it in Lua because it didn't exist. It's Lua. But I didn't figure it out. I did the research and picked the appropriate algorithm. I'm just implementing a known algorithm in another language. So, you don't ask a graph transversal question. And it's like, well, we've never done that. We don't talk about big O node notation as a team. So there's no point interviewing about that. But we do, as you saw, talk a lot about the code and things like that. Could have gotten more into design patterns here. You probably would have for senior to get a better idea of the language. But, I try to, I don't know, we always succeed, but we try to get a good idea of, from the interview, could you succeed on day one, or would we be starting off at a bad point?
This gives you, good, understanding of their practical skills along with the other things you're interviewing for, versus like a whiteboard problem that some companies use.
I mean, I've done a lot of whiteboard problems, and I never felt at the end that it would, even when I felt, oh man, I'd seen that before, I nailed it, I gave the optimal answer, I never felt like it really impressed the team, like they learned a lot about me. So, I don't know, it's interesting.
One of the questions I was asked that I really liked with Revolution Parts was they asked me, this is a CTO, he said, when I go to my browser, I type in www.amazon.com, I press enter, reply happens. To describe it. I love that. Mostly because I nailed it.
If you went to just PHP You have the answer to that question.
Yeah,
But yeah,
but Elizabeth.
Yeah.
So, talk a little bit about how an interview at a company like Amazon, how different it is than this.
So some of the concepts are the same. So like having questions that you can build on in multiple stages is something they do there. Generally, they're doing whiteboard though, not screen share.
Coworker just did an interview at Amazon, and he was talking about how the one specifically we were talking about was a binary tree
Yes,
searching for the ends.
you're going to get algorithm and data
Yeah.
structure based questions. So like, this is one from my interview. I interviewed there in 2011. But have any of you ever played Boggle?
It's been a while, but yeah.
It's a game where you have a 4x4 grid of random letters and you try to make words by connecting the ones they're touching. So the question was, you have a Boggle board and some kind of data structure, find all the words. How do you do that? And then how do you do that? And then like you can give like a basic answer and then like, okay, well, how are you going to prevent revisiting the same letter? Because that's a rule. You can't go over the same twice. So that's a type of question that's going to fill up a whole hour of writing on the whiteboard. And that's what happens when you do that 5 times in one day, a whole day of whiteboard. So that's how those interviews tend to work. And then they generally do 1 or 2 phone screens prior, where they ask you other questions. Yeah, that's generally what they're doing. But yeah, like you said, you're going to get things about trees, graphs, at least one problem, usually more than one, because the interviewers don't generally talk to each other about which questions they're asking. So you could be lucky to get the same question twice. Yeah, so like when you're going to a company like that to interview, you'd want to do research ahead of time on algorithm data structures. And like you were saying before we started, if you don't have a background in algorithm data structures, where you have like something working against you in those interviews because you've never studied those in depth. Whereas someone who may have gone to a particular program at school, studied that for a semester.
Huge advantage, but it's kind
But-
of meaningless. Just
yes.
whether you took that course or not is what they're interviewing for. It's weird.
And what you made is basically, do you do tree traversal, graph traversal algorithms on a daily basis at work? Generally not. Most of the time, the things that you might use are already built. And if you do end up having to build something, it might be once every 3 years. And you have plenty of time to read up on it and study and figure out.
Teammates.
Yeah.
Ask people with better knowledge in subjects.
I mean, if you're at a big company like Amazon, like you're probably adding something to a library that already exists. Talk to the maintainer of said library before you're adding to it. And they're going to actually expect you to anyway. So, you know, they just value different things. I would say there's not necessarily anything wrong with that, but I kind of think there is because, you know, they're kind of interviewing for a shibboleth, the secret knowledge the people in that club have, rather than interviewing for ability and then claiming to interview for ability. And I'm not a fan of that. I try to tailor our interview process to trying to get some clue of ability. I don't know if that's successful, but I think it's a good goal at least.
If you haven't had to fire most of the people that you fired, then I guess you
had to fire people, but yeah,
I said most.
we have not had to fire most. Hiring is hard.
It is.
It's really hard, and and we will often say no to somebody who we think might work out, but everybody doesn't agree it, and it's just not. On a small team, it's often not worth the risk of a bad hire. It's better to just not have that resource. Where on a big team, you're much more likely to be like, oh, well, if we're churning out one person or two people on our 10 or 12 person team, it's not the end of the world. But on a 5-person team, that's really, really painful.
Yeah.
Which is also, I guess, something to think about if you're ever in a hiring position, of that your hiring style can change as your team grows. You just have to be comfortable with fire. It's super hard to be comfortable at. All right, well, thanks for coming, everybody. I hope you found this enjoyable and you learned something. So afterwards here, we'll go get some drink and food. We've been going to, what's the new name?
Whatever
Coach's
Crown.
Corner?
Yeah. Used to be or is now.
No, now it's Rose and Crown, whatever they are.
Rose and Crown,
Crown
yeah.
Club, Crown Club.
It's, let me look up the name.
Fourth Street.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's called Crown Club now.
yeah, Rose and Crown Pub.
It's right where the stop is for the train.
Science Center.
Across the street from it, yeah.
Yeah.
It's easy walking distance from here, or as long as there's no event, there's lots of parking, free parking even over there.